Can you give us an overview of your political career and how that led to the support you're now giving ECES with the experience you have?
Okay, thank you, and nice to see you again after Kenya elections, which were very an important moment in the last few months of both my career and the activities of ECES. Um, let's say that I've been working with African countries since the 80s, so this is really my passion of work around development, both economic and social development, and also political stabilization of countries of Africa. So what happens is that let's say the two more silent moments of my career were when the European Union appointed me as ambassador for the EU in Ghana from 2005 to 2008. And at that time, I was also covering Togo. So Ghana and Togo were two different countries in terms of the conjuncture there, also politically. In Togo was much more tense than in Ghana, where the democracy was comparatively already working quite well. And then the second appointment was in 2011 to 2016 in Tanzania. So at that occasion, I also met for the first time the ECES, the European Center for Electoral Support, who was supporting the elections through a coordinating mechanism of donors. I also met you as a film director because you made the African election film based on the Ghana case of 2008. So I think this experience of the Ghana election were very much of importance also for other elections in Africa, because the film One African Election, produced by you and ECES together, was used massively as a campaign tool for peaceful election, showing concretely how tensions and development in the real days of election took place and how they were eventually taken to a positive outcome. And so this means that when 2 years ago, I retired from the European Union, I was very happy to join ECES as being part of the team. I have the honor of being the vice president of a strategic and advisory committee where, a number of more experienced people, like also a former vice president of the African Union Commission from Kenya, or a former member of parliament like Monica Frassoni, and others. Also, I think the head of the Electoral Commission in Jordan. So there are a number of experienced people who advise ECES on how to approach the important work of assisting for credible and inclusive election the countries of Africa or other developing countries, and also how to work more in the area of prevention of violence and prevention of conflict. Similarly, in Nigeria, ECES has supported the election process for 5 years as well, which reflects very much the fact that election is a cycle, it's not a one-off event. So there is a lot to do from the day after one election to prepare for the next election in terms of communication, credibility of the institutions, in terms of technology, the various system of transmitting results or registering voters, in terms of involving more civil society, vulnerable groups. So there is a lot to do in terms of preparing elections so that when election comes, they are trusted by the people. There is not the usual mistrust that everything is already decided and there will be games and rigging. So this means that in my case, even after retirement, being active for supporting democracy and election projects in Africa is really part of my motivation, part of my passion, and I'm very also grateful to ECES for giving me this opportunity to support them in this very noble activity.
With the challenges working in the countries you mentioned, how come you chose ECES? or is it that ECES chose you?
Well, I think it has been a sort of natural attraction, in a say, natural coming together. I was particularly, I was very happy of what we did together, I would say, me as head of the EU delegation in Tanzania and ECES as support provider. We did a very good job in Zanzibar. Why I'm saying so? Because with ECES we were able to put forward this caravan campaign in the villages about peaceful election, but this was just the top of the iceberg. Because there was the setting up of a nice infrastructure for peace, made of 3 levels of peace actors, starting from the bottom with I don't remember how many, but maybe even in the number of 100 local communities organization that were involved through training and cascade training about leadership and conflict management, and they were discussing how to deal with conflicts that are related to the election, but inevitably at local level are also connected with pre-existing grievances, be it for land or for different differences in ethnicity or in religion. So first of all, with the National Electoral Commission there, ZEC, I think it was called, Zanzibar Electoral Commission, which is mandated to organize the election, but also to engage with political parties, with civil society, with all electoral stakeholders, with the police, to make sure that elections are transparent and credible and inclusive. So we worked a lot with them, but also with the other bodies. We worked in terms of promoting channels of coordination and, let's say, early warning system so that they could anticipate problems and intervene in case of violence. With the police, hopefully not in a way, to exacerbate the violence, but rather to control it. We were able to pre-establish channel of communication between the two main contestants through a college of high-level people that had access to both of them. And we actually were able to have meetings between them before the election. So I was very, let's say, satisfied, together with my fellow ambassador of European Union member states and with other partners like the UN. I was very happy of this peace infrastructure that we were able to put in place. Why then I use the metaphor of the patient died? Because in a way the result of election was not entirely credible. There was a last-minute intervention of the police who closed the office of the Electoral Commission. So at the very end, the electoral process was not entirely transparent. Nevertheless, the losing side, who is the traditional opposition, even contesting the result, did not take the street for the responsibility of the leader of the time, who now unfortunately is dead. So these leaders of CUF ran for 5 times election. He lost all of them, but in the end he always preferred not to create chaos, which is a sense of responsibility and a sense that the nation, it comes before the interest of the side. So in the end, maybe the election were not as good as we would have liked, but in terms of the infrastructure to avoid violence, I think this was very a good experience and very successful. So in that sense, my interaction with ECES, so this was a long story to say why I like to work with ECES, because they had this way of intervening at various levels, from the grassroots to the institutional level to the top leader level, with not only messages but concrete tool of training and education. And I see that this is what makes the works of ECES important in many countries, and this is why we agreed from the very day I quit the active service in the European External Action Service with Fabio Bargiacchi, the director. We met and we say, okay, let's now work together, and I'm supporting them since now 2 years in a number of countries.
Coming from outside, how do you find ways to implement what is needed inside?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very, very valid and important question. Unfortunately, often the European Union or other Western countries are seen as coming just, with the formula saying, okay, you have to have elections, and elections are to be done like this and this, and it is imposed from outside. This is a bit how it is viewed. I mean, many people appreciate, for instance, international observation mission because they give credibility to the process of election. Many also appreciate that the European Union devolves so much funds, not only for development projects, but also for democratic consolidation projects. But it is true that there is the risk, a big perception is that the European Union or the US or Canada or other, let's say, Western countries come with, the formula, the magic formula. This is democracy. This is how you have to implement it. So these are the ingredients of democracy. But then this needs to be part of the local culture, the local feeling. So in that sense, there are many challenges, I would say, in Africa or in many developing countries. For instance, if we take political parties, often political parties are around one face. And maybe sometimes this face is because of a certain ethnic group or a certain religious side. So in a sense, the party does not represent a political platform in terms of what we want to do on the economy, what you want to do on the health, on education, but is more about the power of a certain group in the society, represented by that leader. Coming to the end of your question, democracy is not a single formula. It's a long process that comes from, let's say, a given situation, and maybe a few decades later, it arrives to a different level of maturation, of maturity. And I see that in many African countries, democracy and election are taking root, including with, let's say, a root in their own culture. There are still difficult situations. For instance, there have been many coups d'etat in the last few years, especially in West Africa. Well, the future of ECES, in a way, one dream will be that ECES is basically recognized as an European agency for electoral and democracy support. But this is more of a dream than a reality, because the creation of European agency is a very heavy institutional process where, member states decide to create an agency, then they fight on which capital should be placed. It's a very huge process that is decided at the level of heads of state. So this probably is too much of a dream for an organization like ECES. But the reason why I'm saying it is because basically the European Center for Electoral Support is entirely based and built on the European Union values and policies. So if the European Union wants to have electoral assistance in a certain way, the ECES is ready to deliver it. If the European Union wants to do prevention of conflict related to election in a certain way, again, ECES is there to implement, and it is our way of looking at things. We were saying that ECES has very good relationship with local actors, but in terms of the values and the principle and the policies that we promote, these are the one of the European Union. So now, apart this dream, in concrete terms, I think ECES has grown quite a lot since its foundation 12 years ago. It has been implementing, hundreds of projects in more than 55 countries, many in Africa, but not only, also in difficult countries like Afghanistan or in the Middle East.
Comes to your mind when thinking about Fabio's personality? What is it that you like?
Okay, well, I think Fabio, first of all, he's very passionate of elections. So if I am passionate about development and democracy, he has a passion that is even more focused and canalized to promoting elections and good elections. So first of all, he has this same passion that I have, which is a good ingredient also to inspire the other people. And then he has an incredible working capacity. So he is active, from the nitty-gritty to the more strategic things on many countries, on many projects. He has plenty of interlocutors in many countries. So in that sense, I think his passion and his energy are the most important tool that makes, let's say, the success of ECES. The success of ECES comes a lot from this. Then, of course, any organization need also to evolve. So, small and medium enterprises, sometimes they have the challenge to move from the family-based management structure to a more corporate.
You had that moment when you look back and realize the positive impact that you have had.
Well, in a way, it's only 2 years that I'm involved in very closely in election affairs. Before, when I worked for the EU, I was dealing with a much broader spectrum of things, from socioeconomic projects through very hard trade negotiations to political dialogue on even on issues like death penalty, for instance, a big thing. In many countries, death penalty still exists, and for the EU has always been a principle to support a process of going away from death penalty, just because of the basic universal right of people to live even when they make mistakes. So in a country like Ghana, and this is maybe not completely a compliment, those who are in power today were already in power at that time. Unfortunately, there is not much of a change of generation in leadership. But of course, if I go to Ghana, I can have access to many people that I met at the time, and I could meet again. The same happened, for instance, the other day I was for a conference in Mauritius, a conference of the Indian Ocean Commission. Again, it is an ECES project to support peace and security architecture by the Indian Ocean Commission, where there are issues, of maritime insecurity, piracy, and then other issues related to more internal process to the countries. So I was there, and I was telling to the Secretary-General of the Indian Ocean Commission that it was almost 30 years that I did not come to Mauritius. And then in his opening intervention in the conference, he mentioned the name of a certain Pierre In, so a Mauritian of Chinese origin, who wrote a thesis on regional integration in the Indian Ocean. And I said, well, but Pierre In is the guy with whom I worked 30 years ago in Mauritius for to identify a planning project for the entire region. So it's amazing, that after 30 years, I discovered that he, through that experience and others, he became the father of regional integration in the Indian Ocean. So these kind of things happen, and this is where, it's nice to be remembered by people, to remember people, to meet people that were engaged in something, and maybe 30 years later they are, as you say, in a very important position. And in a way, I remain always quite humble, so I don't go necessarily, for having a carnet of address list of VIPs. For me, is as important my relationship with the driver I used to be supported in Ghana to the president that used to be the foreign minister at that time, and that I have had some very good exchange in the past.
You have a very young team. How do you bridge the potential gaps between age, seniority, ethnic backgrounds?
No, I think it's more of a management issue than something else. At the very beginning of my career, I was not in an institution. I was working with, I would say, a think tank. It was in Italy, in Rome. And there was the big professor, who was the name known by everybody, who was called here and there by governments, by regional government, to get support. And then there was a bunch of youngers like me working with him. And he always said, you will be here with us 2-3 years, then you will go, you will continue your process. And the strength of our organization is that there is constantly new blood and constantly people who grow and keep a good memory of that start. And it creates also a network of people that know each other. So I think this is a management model. Of course, there are other management models. This is the management model that also Fabio consciously or unconsciously has applied. So there are in ECES a number of young people that start their career here. They stay 2, 3, 4, maximum 5 years. Then they evolve. They have something else, either with ECES at a higher responsibility or with other organizations. And I think it's not bad. It's not bad. Maybe, what you need is to have also some intermediate level between, let's say, the very top managers and experienced people and, let's say, the beginners. You need some intermediate figures, but when you have 2 or 3 of them is more than enough. ECES has always here in the headquarters, about 10 or 15 very young staff, as you say. The beauty for them is that they are highly motivated. They learn fast, they bring some new capacity, and I think this helps the organization to remain active and flexible.